The corporate recruitment office occupied the 34th floor of a glass tower in downtown Chicago, all sleek minimalism and calculated professionalism. Michelle Foster sat behind her mahogany desk reviewing her calendar with satisfaction. As Senior Talent Acquisition Director at Sterling & Associates, one of the nation's premier executive recruiting firms, she'd built her reputation on spotting potential in polished candidates. Her assistant buzzed. "Michelle, your 2 p.m. is here. Michael Chen?" Michelle glanced at her screen, frowning. She didn't recognize the name and there was no file prepared. "I don't have a 2 p.m. scheduled. He says he has an appointment." Something about the executive search? Michelle's jaw tightened. Walk-ins claiming appointments were usually time wasters, desperate job seekers trying to bypass the system. "Give me 2 minutes, then send him in. And keep it brief. I have actual clients at 2:30. She pulled up her active searches. Sterling & Associates was currently recruiting for several C-suite positions. CEOs, CFOs, COOs for Fortune 500 companies. High-stakes placements with 6-figure commissions. The kind of work that required vetted, pre-qualified candidates, not random walk-ins. The door opened and Michelle's assistant ushered in a man who immediately triggered every red flag in her professional assessment system. Michael Chen looked to be in his mid-30s, wearing jeans and a plain white button-down shirt, no tie, no jacket. His sneakers were clean but casual. He carried a simple messenger bag instead of a leather briefcase. His hair was slightly longer than corporate standard. He looked like a tech startup employee, not an executive candidate. "Mr. Chen," Michelle said, not standing or offering her hand. "I'm afraid there's been some confusion. I don't have you scheduled." "I apologize for the mix-up," Michael said, his tone pleasant. "I was told to come in at 2 p.m. to discuss the executive search." "Which executive search?" "We have several active." "The CEO position." Michelle barely suppressed an eye roll. "We're currently recruiting for multiple CEO positions across various industries. Could you be more specific?" "Actually, I was hoping you could tell me about them." "I'm interested in understanding your process." This was getting worse. He didn't even know which position he was supposedly qualified for. Michelle glanced at her watch, a Cartier that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Mr. Chen, I'm going to be direct. Sterling & Associates works with pre-vetted, highly qualified candidates. We don't accept walk-in applications. If you're looking for employment opportunities, I'd suggest going through our website portal." "I'm not looking for employment," Michael said calmly. "Then why are you here?" "I'm interested in how you evaluate candidates, what criteria you use, how you determine who's qualified and who isn't." Michelle's patience evaporated. She'd dealt with time wasters before, consultants fishing for industry information, competitors conducting reconnaissance, occasionally delusional individuals who thought they could talk their way into executive positions. "Mr. Chen, I don't have time for this. Whatever you're actually here for, this isn't the appropriate venue. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "Just a few questions first, if you don't mind. When you look at a candidate, what's the first thing you assess?" "Their qualifications, obviously. Education, experience, track record." "Before that," Michael interrupted gently, "what do you assess before you even look at their resume?" Michelle felt her annoyance shifting to anger. "I don't understand what you're trying to accomplish here. I'm trying to understand if you judge people by their credentials or their appearance. Because from the moment I walked in, you decided I wasn't qualified. You didn't ask for my background, didn't request my resume. You saw my clothes and made a determination. That's not—" Michelle stopped, realizing he was right. She had judged him immediately. But that was just professional efficiency, wasn't it? Reading signals, making quick assessments based on presentation. Mr. Chen, in executive recruiting, presentation matters. How you present yourself indicates how you'll represent a company. If you walk into a high-level interview dressed like you're going to a coffee shop, that shows poor judgment. Does it? Or does it show that I'm confident enough in my abilities that I don't need expensive suits to prove my worth? Michelle stood, signaling the meeting was over. "This conversation is pointless. You're clearly not here for legitimate reasons. I'm going to have to ask you to leave, and if you don't, I'll call security. Before I go, can I ask what qualifies someone for your CEO searches? What's the minimum requirement? Typically, 15 to 20 years of executive experience, proven track record of revenue growth, industry expertise, elite MBA preferred. References from board members or other C-suite executives. What about someone who's already been a CEO? Built a company from scratch? Michelle's laugh was sharp. Mr. Chen, if you'd actually been a CEO, you'd know how to present yourself professionally. You'd understand that credibility starts with appearance. So, if I told you I've been CEO of 3 different companies, you wouldn't believe me. Frankly, number. CEO-level executives don't walk into recruitment offices in jeans asking philosophical questions about hiring practices. What if I told you one of those companies was acquired by Google for $2.4 billion? Michelle's expression shifted from annoyed to condescending. Then I'd say you're either delusional or lying, because that kind of acquisition is public record, and I'd know about it. Michael pulled out his phone, scrolled for a moment, then set it on Michelle's desk. The screen showed a TechCrunch article. Google acquires CloudSync for $2.4 billion. CEO Michael Chen to join Google's leadership team. The article was dated 3 years earlier. The photo showed the same man sitting in her office, though in that picture he wore a suit and stood between Google's CEO and the CloudSync leadership team. Michelle stared at the phone, her mind racing. She picked it up, scrolling through the article. It was real. The acquisition was real. Michael Chen was real. She couldn't finish the sentence. The CEO who built CloudSync from my garage to 5,000 employees and a $2.4 billion exit. Yes, his tone wasn't boastful, just matter-of-fact. Michelle felt the ground shifting beneath her. Why didn't you say something? Why did you let me dismiss me? Judge me, decide I wasn't qualified based purely on my appearance? Michael took his phone back. Because I wanted to see if you would, and you did. I don't understand. Why are you here? Sterling and Associates is recruiting for a CEO position at Tech Ventures Incorporated. I'm on their board. I have approval authority over the final candidate. I came here, dressed casually, using a common name instead of my full professional credentials, to see how you'd treat someone who didn't look the part. The blood drained from Michelle's face. You're testing us? I'm testing you specifically. Your firm came highly recommended, but I wanted to understand if you actually evaluate candidates on merit, or if you make decisions based on superficial criteria like appearance and presentation. Mr. Chen, Dr. Chen, I apologize. If I'd known— That's exactly the problem, Michael interrupted. You're apologizing because now you know who I am, but your treatment of me before you knew was telling. You didn't ask about my background, didn't inquire about my experience. You saw jeans and sneakers and decided I was wasting your time. Michelle's mind was spinning, trying to salvage the situation. I made a mistake. But surely you understand that in executive recruiting we have to make quick assessments. Based on what? I just proved that appearance tells you nothing about qualification. I've been CEO of 3 companies. I have 2 patents in cloud computing. I've spoken at Stanford, MIT, and Wharton. I currently sit on 4 corporate boards, and you decided I was a time-wasting walk-in because I didn't wear a suit. It was an error in judgment. It was discrimination. You discriminated against me based on age and appearance. And before you say that's not illegal in a business context, let me remind you that I'm also Asian American. So when you looked at me and decided I didn't look like a CEO, what exactly did that judgment include? Michelle's face went from pale to ashen. I never considered race. Didn't you? What does a CEO look like in your mind? Let me guess. Older, white, in an expensive suit, carrying a leather briefcase. That's the image you're optimizing for, isn't it? That's not fair. What's not fair is that qualified candidates are probably being filtered out of your process because they don't match your predetermined image of success. What's not fair is that you're gatekeeping executive positions based on appearance rather than ability. Michael stood, preparing to leave. I came here hoping to be wrong. Hoping that a top recruitment firm would see past surface presentation and actually evaluate credentials. Instead, I got exactly what I expected. Judgment based on looks, followed by an apology only after you realized I was someone important. Please, Dr. Chen, give me a chance to make this right. How? By treating me well now that you know I'm wealthy and successful. That doesn't fix the fundamental problem. How many qualified candidates have you dismissed because they didn't look right? How many brilliant people have you filtered out because they wore the wrong clothes or didn't project the image you expected? Michelle had no answer. I'll be recommending to Tech Ventures that they use a different recruitment firm. And I'll be sharing this experience with my network, which includes about 40 CEOs and 200 board members. They deserve to know that Sterling & Associates prioritizes appearance over substance. You're going to ruin my reputation over one mistake. I'm going to tell the truth about what happened. If that ruins your reputation, maybe your reputation deserves to be ruined. Michael headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, the CEO Tech Ventures needs isn't someone who looks like a CEO. It's someone who can transform a struggling company, lead diverse teams, and innovate in a rapidly changing market. Those skills have nothing to do with expensive suits or leather briefcases. After he left, Michelle sat in stunned silence. Her assistant appeared in the doorway. Is everything okay? That seemed tense. That was Michael Chen, CloudSync founder, board member at Tech Ventures, the company we're recruiting for. Her assistant's eyes widened. Oh my God, the Michael Chen? Yes, and I just threw him out of my office because he was wearing jeans. Within an hour, Michelle's phone was ringing. First her boss, demanding to know what happened with the Tech Ventures board member. Then the managing partner, asking why their biggest active search was suddenly in jeopardy. Then colleagues who'd heard through the grapevine that Michelle had massively screwed up. She tried calling Michael to apologize properly, to explain, to salvage something. The calls went to voicemail. Her emails went unanswered. 2 days later, Sterling & Associates received formal notice that Tech Ventures was terminating their recruitment agreement and moving to a different firm. The stated reason: concerns about unconscious bias in candidate evaluation. Michelle was called into the managing partner's office. Do you have any idea how much revenue we just lost? Gerald Stern's voice was icy. Tech Ventures was a $300,000 placement, plus the potential for ongoing relationship with their board members. Gone, because you couldn't be bothered to treat a walk-in respectfully? I didn't know who he was. That's the problem. Gerald's composure cracked. You should treat everyone respectfully. Every person who walks through that door could be a client, a candidate, a connection. But you judged based on appearance and lost us a major account. Gerald, I made a mistake, but we can recover. It's worse than you think. Michael Chen posted about his experience on LinkedIn. It's gone viral. 3,000 comments and counting. Other executives are sharing stories about being judged by appearance. Our brand is being shredded in real time. Michelle pulled out her phone, navigating to LinkedIn. Michael's post was right there. Today, I walked into a top executive recruiting firm dressed casually to see how I'd be treated. Despite being a CEO with multiple successful exits, I was dismissed as a time waster within minutes, not because of my credentials, which weren't asked about, but because I didn't look like an executive. This is a systemic problem in recruiting. Gatekeepers who prioritize appearance over ability, image over substance. We need to do better. The comments were brutal. CEOs sharing similar experiences. Women talking about being dismissed, people of color describing bias, and dozens of executives saying they'd never work with Sterling & Associates. We're getting cancellations, Gerald continued. 3 active searches put on hold pending further evaluation of our practices. This could destroy the firm, Michelle. All because you couldn't spend 5 minutes being professional to someone who didn't meet your visual standards. I'll fix this. I'll reach out to every client, explain. You're suspended. 2 weeks, unpaid. We need to do damage control, and having you visible right now makes it worse. We're bringing in a diversity consultant, implementing new protocols, and completely revamping our approach." Suspended? Gerald, you're lucky you're not fired. The only reason you're not is that this can be a learning moment for the entire firm. We're going to train everyone on unconscious bias, on treating all candidates with respect, on evaluating substance over style, and you're going to be the cautionary tale we use in that training. Walking out of the office, Michelle felt humiliation burning through her. Her reputation, built over 15 years, was crumbling. All because of 15 minutes with a man in jeans. But the worst part wasn't the suspension or the public shaming. It was the growing realization that Michael had been right. She had judged him instantly and completely based on appearance. She had decided he was unqualified before knowing anything about him, and she'd done it because he didn't match her mental image of what success looked like. How many times had she done this before without realizing it? How many qualified candidates had she filtered out because they were too young, too casual, too different from her preconceptions? The answer made her sick. 2 weeks later, returning from suspension, Michelle walked into a transformed office. Diversity and inclusion posters lined the walls. New protocols required detailed notes on why candidates were advanced or rejected. Training sessions on unconscious bias were mandatory for all staff. And in the conference room, playing on a loop during training, was a video of Michael Chen speaking at a tech conference about innovation, leadership, and looking beyond surface presentations to find real talent. The man in the video wore jeans and a t-shirt. He commanded the stage with effortless authority. 1,500 executives hung on his every word. Michelle watched, seeing clearly what she'd missed in her office: genuine confidence that didn't need expensive suits to validate it. Real expertise that spoke for itself. The kind of leadership that transcended appearance. She'd had that in her office. Had spoken with someone who embodied everything she claimed to be seeking in executive candidates. And she'd thrown him out because he didn't look the part. 6 months later, Michelle ran into Michael at an industry conference. She'd debated whether to approach him, ultimately deciding she had to try. "Dr. Chen, I owe you an apology. A real one, not the desperate one I gave when I realized who you were." Michael turned, his expression neutral. "Go ahead. You were right, about everything. I did judge you on appearance. I did discriminate, and I probably did it to countless candidates without even realizing. Your visit was a wake-up call I desperately needed. Has anything changed?" "Yes. Actually, yes. Our entire firm has transformed how we evaluate candidates. We implemented blind resume reviews, structured interview protocols, mandatory bias training. And, personally, I catch myself now. When I start making snap judgments based on appearance, I force myself to stop and actually evaluate credentials. That's good, but you understand it shouldn't have taken public humiliation to get there." "I do." "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just saying thank you for holding up a mirror, even though I hated what I saw." Michael nodded slowly. "The Tech Ventures CEO we eventually placed? She's 28, wears Doc Martens to board meetings, and has purple highlights in her hair. She's also a genius who's already turned the company around. The recruiter who placed her saw past the appearance to the substance." "Who was the recruiter?" "Someone from a small firm that focuses on merit over presentation. Someone who asked about my background before making judgments." Michelle absorbed the lesson. "I deserved to lose that placement." "Yes, you did. But if you've actually changed, if Sterling and Associates has actually transformed its approach, then maybe some good came from it. We have changed. I've changed. I can't undo what happened, but I'm trying to make sure it never happens again." "Then we're good," Michael said simply. "Growth requires discomfort. You got the discomfort. If you do the growth, then the experience was worth it." A year after the incident, Michelle was presenting at a recruiting conference. Her topic: Looking Beyond the Suit, How Unconscious Bias Costs Us Top Talent. She told the story honestly, how she'd dismissed a billionaire CEO because he wore jeans, how that mistake had gone viral and nearly destroyed her career, how it had forced her to confront biases she didn't know she had. "The question I ask myself now," she told the audience, "is not, does this candidate look like a CEO, but does this candidate have the skills, experience, and character to be a CEO? Those are very different questions with very different answers." She showed data. Since implementing their new evaluation protocols, Sterling and Associates had placed more diverse candidates, received better client satisfaction scores, and actually increased revenue. Turns out that when you judge people on merit instead of appearance, you find better candidates. Who knew? The audience laughed, but the message was serious. After the presentation, a young woman approached. "Ms. Foster, I'm a recruiter at a tech startup. I've been guilty of exactly what you described. Thank you for having the courage to admit your mistake publicly." "The courage wasn't mine," Michelle admitted. "It was Michael Chen's. He had the courage to call out a systemic problem, even knowing there would be backlash. I just had to be humble enough to learn from it." 5 years after the infamous meeting, Michelle saw a LinkedIn post from Michael. He was announcing a new initiative, a scholarship fund for underrepresented minorities pursuing careers in technology and business. She commented, "This is incredible. Thank you for continuing to open doors that others keep closed." His reply was simple. That's what leaders do. They see potential where others see obstacles, just like someone should have seen it in me that day in your office and didn't. The comment wasn't bitter, just honest. A reminder of the lesson that had changed Michelle's entire approach to recruiting. She kept that comment saved on her phone. On days when she caught herself making snap judgments, when she felt the pull of old biases, she'd read it again, because the truth was uncomfortable but necessary. She'd been a gatekeeper who kept deserving people out based on how they looked rather than what they could do. She'd been part of a system that valued image over substance, presentation over performance. And it had taken being publicly called out by a billionaire in jeans to make her see it. Now she was different. Her firm was different. The industry was slowly changing, but the change hadn't come because people suddenly became enlightened. It came because someone had the courage to walk into an office looking wrong and prove that their assumptions were exactly that, assumptions with no basis in reality. Sometimes the best teacher is the lesson you never wanted to learn, and sometimes the person you dismiss today is the person who shows you who you really are. If this story resonated with you, remember, never judge potential by appearance. The person in jeans might be a billionaire. The casual dresser might be a genius. The candidate who doesn't look the part might be exactly what you need. Share this with recruiters, hiring managers, anyone who makes decisions about people's careers. Remind them that credentials matter more than clothes, substance matters more than style, and ability can't be judged by appearance. Subscribe to Real Justice Stories for more tales of bias confronted, systems changed, and the power of looking beyond the surface. Thank you for watching. Remember, the next person you judge by their appearance might be the one who changes your entire perspective. Treat everyone with respect, not because they might be important, but because respect should be universal.